Hallo miteinander, Geschichte 6, and this is Cross the Boundaries, a fairly recent story-driven title focused around the Secret Sealing Club. When it comes to genre, this is a puzzle adventure game with some heavy themes of horror. A pretty rare combination within the fandom, but not entirely unheard of. Comparable titles would be Third Eye or Flan's MS. I have prepared a save file at the beginning of the 5th chapter. This spot not only has a good density of puzzles, but isn't so deep within the narrative yet that you should feel lost. We are controlling Sealing Club President Renko Usami within a dark forest of what we can assume is the land of Gensokyo. Vice President Maribel Hearn has vanished from the real world without a trace. Since she has been gone for 30 days, we believe her to be stuck in fantasy and are in pursuit. Now, in videos like these that I call Let's Take a Look At, we're usually inching our way to what a game has to offer. I am cutting the suspense short today and saying it outright, I am enamored with Cross the Boundaries. Its oppressive imagery, like little Maribel's past here where it starts, and the tugging at our heartstrings will only get fiercer. If you need proof that this one is special, well, I had been out of ideas for uploads for half a year, and it brought me back. We shall find out why this resonated so well with me. Although she was frightened at first, tiny Maribel would also be fascinated by the occult and supernatural. Eventually, curiosity won over fear, and she would seek out these phenomena. Unfortunately, the people she trusted didn't want to hear about her experiences, hence mommy and daddy issues. With this introduction over, the chapter can start proper. We have a fairly open zone to navigate and an almost empty inventory to fill. Consulting the children's book informs us of our main objective, to break 5 curses which are personified. One is the Dark Lurker, a feral-looking creature that is difficult to define as it squeezes itself through a cracked tree. The text reveals, though, that it might take the form of a small girl with golden hair. Next in line is someone much easier to identify, Nightbug. Certainly has to be Wriggle, though not as we're used to. The unassuming Firefly-themed girl is looking very insectoid with a massively bulbous rump. Sekibanki is also not getting much flattery with this interpretation of her. We receive a hint on how to deal with her immediately, the blood of a white-haired dog. No information about the 4th curse, but hubba hubba, it seems Wakasagi Hime has left her dress at the bottom of the lake. What a terrible predicament that I am most distraught over. Totally. There's mention of Wakasa, the old name for a province west of Kyoto. That would be all the information we're getting for now. The first item we collect ourselves is this paper doll. It's described to us as a supposedly honest, but actually dishonest man. We don't have a clue what it could be about, and neither can we interact with it, but I can tell you the paper doll is as mandatory as can be. In fact, here is another, granting us the impression that whatever puzzle they have to do with involves several copies of paper dolls. To the east of the central zone is a dilapidated cottage where we can scrounge for not one, but 2 important items. A lighter and a note with a clue. The lighter isn't useful by its lonesome, but the written piece we can inspect at once. The unknown diary alludes to a princess, perhaps Kaguya and her crew of A&A. We did spot some bamboo nearby, so maybe we are close to their mystical hideout. It goes on about rabbits, so perhaps Tei and Reisen might play a role, hopefully not as antagonists. While exploring, we're listening to a nice and calm rendition of Imperishable Night's Stage 1 theme. Obviously it would be slower, it doesn't need to accompany us gunning down scores of fairies. After all, this interpretation of Renko isn't much of a fighter. Certainly we are meant to follow this glowing trail of fireflies. It must be what the developer intends us to do, right? Oh. Welp, Renko is no more. She got wriggle kicked and wriggle devoured. Cross the Boundaries does not pull its punches. With puzzle adventure games, there's always the question whether a game over state is even sensible. Some old titles by Sierra, King's Quest and such, have made it a tradition to have them, yet you need to ask yourself if it truly increases the fun of the game to have deaths, especially once you notice your last manual save was half an hour ago. Luckily, Cross the Boundaries autosaves pretty much anything you accomplish. In case of the horror adventure subgenre, I think it is quite important for the player to possibly lose, even if it just slightly inconveniences them. When a game, even if it has intriguingly thick atmosphere, only teases you with horror, it may become toothless once you catch on. That's an edge this game has over Third Eye and some others I've played. The Peachtree note will finally enlighten us on what is up with the paper dolls. It tells of a parable concerning 8 crooks, while still being sheepishly shy about labeling them as such. In the end, one crook kills the other 7. The puzzle demands us to become that lone surviving crook. We can now begin ripping up the paper dolls, of which we already had 5 in our inventory, and we don't have to be cautious about this, gather them in bulk, or do the tearing in a certain place. So long as all 7 are somehow destroyed, our reward will materialize at the Peachtree. There is another paper doll at the Hangman, but that one represents us. When we try to rip it, we'll simply learn that it is too sturdy. That makes me wonder if at one point in development you would cartoonishly game over by making Renko ignorantly brutalize herself. It's probably for the better that we don't have that option. We've arrived at a cozy lake, located at the western end of the zone. Wakasagi Hime should have something to do with a lake, and indeed, the fisherman's note reads of a picky eater of a mermaid. Alas, there's nothing we can do at the moment to meet the wet princess. In fact, she will always be either the last or second to last curse to take care of, depending on how you approach these puzzles. The last paper doll should be somewhere around here. Even though the areas aren't too big and your field of vision is decently large, I can see how a player could get stuck with that damned last one they keep missing. So, be thorough and swerve out during your search. Well, looks like we found Sekibanki's hideout. Since we don't have the tools to deal with her yet, Renko's sense of self-preservation forces us to flee from the place. The neighboring path, however, lets us meet a cute Benui, and there is something we can do here. Chasing it isn't the answer. The note from much earlier told us to mirror Tei's movements to overcome her trickery. Only then do we find Tei, or what we can only call its ruins. It's left open whether this game takes place much later than the typical Tales of Gensokyo, or there's the possibility that this ruinous building is another illusion cast by Kaguya, Erin and Reisen simply because they don't want to meet us. Why would they grant us that honor for just barging in? The reason we came here was so that we can learn how to identify medicinal plants from a book. That's all we actually needed. By the way, if you bump directly into Tei on the way here, you'll receive a Steam achievement. There are 10 in total in this game, 3 of which have to do with progression. The rest are silly or dangerous things you can do, often for no other purpose than claiming that trophy. We did spot what looked like the mentioned medicinal plants at the lake. Now that Renko has the necessary knowledge, we can see and pluck it. Any potential speedrunners might want to know that Renko learns new things from picking up written notes. It's not mandatory for the player to open them in the inventory screen. With how much we have collected in the meantime, we have solutions for some prior problems. First, let's snatch up the Peach Tree prize for the disposal of all 7 crooks. It's a cross. A golden church cross, to be exact. The power of Christ compels someone? There's also revenge we can get for what happened to poor Renko in a now-forgotten timeline, and we can claim it thanks to the combination of 2 of our items. We're following that dastardly shining trail of fireflies again, but with a plan readied in Renko's big brain. The items to use are the medicinal plants and the lighter to burn them, so that we create an insect-repellent smoke. You can do this from anywhere on this screen, so long as you don't venture all the way ahead into the ambush. The incense sends the monstrous wriggle running for good. For our efforts, we get to experience another nightmarish vision of our friend Maribel, in which she has had her appendages severed and scattered all about. There's been the fan theory that Maribel might be transforming into Yukari Yakumo at some point, and this image could be referring to her powers of gaps. The many demonic eyes around her certainly don't make this too far-fetched. I had thought about presenting this game to you at its chronological starting point. However, player agency is really low in Cross the Boundaries' first 20 minutes. It would have come across as mostly a visual novel to you. This doesn't mean that its early pacing makes it slow or even boring. In fact, I can think of 2 very striking scenes with just as much punch as this one, and they immediately hooked me. That great first impression would be honored all the way to its end. The one thing I should criticize is that the game could have needed some more proofreading. You can tell that the writing style and phrasing is quite good and ambitious, yet it's marred a bit by some typos and grammatical errors. Our victory over Wriggle allows us to learn the identity of the last mystery curse of the 5, night sparrows, Mistia Lorelei, no doubt. I have accidentally ignored the area we can find her in. It's just north of the hollow tree stump. Nonetheless, you did not miss much. Mistia's song, which is supposed to be loud and obnoxious, although I kind of like it, would have only chased Renko away, similar to what happened to us at Sekibanki's turf. Reading about the sparrows also granted us the key to combat Mistia, an incantation about chirping birds that will lessen the impact of her singing and obfuscation. Let's head there right away. What is about to start is an auditory puzzle. We'll have to choose one of 3 passageways, and we recognize the correct one by where the volume increases. I'd assume Renko can die here if you make mistakes or take too long, but I can't say firsthand. No matter if you use headphones or speakers, the difference in volume is really easy to pinpoint. I'm reminded of The Messenger, an NES Ninja Gaiden-like that had a similar auditory puzzle in a system of underwater tunnels. After 3 correct educated guesses, we arrive at Mistia's izakaya. Exorcising this curse is perhaps the most pacifist of all. We simply tell Mistia to shut her damn bug-crunching munch hole. That's all it takes. The developer's commentary on her is quite amusing. Mistia was a late addition and was supposed to have a dangerous and fiendish design, except she turned out too cute. Unintentionally cute. For some unknown reason, the hollowed-out tree has opened up. You could notice by the fact that the giant symbolic key on it has been exchanged for the typical blue arrows. The inside is much more fanciful than expected. Maybe this is where the A&T crew has moved to? Probably not, as I doubt the princess would take kindly to what's on the menu. Raw dog meat. Haven't we read that Nuka-Kubi fear the blood of a white dog? We are not so starved that we'd want the meat itself. Conserving some blood is good enough. How fortunate the owner of this hideout is away. Whoever it is, I'm sure they would stop us from escaping. Well, here's the Dark Lurker, who we know as Rumia. Don't panic, getting captured into her personal realm of darkness is intended, but now Renko only lives by 3 hit points. Blood slows you down, obstacles block you outright, and there's 3 courses to survive through. You're healed to full on each one, but still, this is no joke. I cannot brag this time about my first ever attempt being successful, as it was not. The hitbox of the blood is a bit wider than you'd think, so you'll need to get a hang of that. After running for our lives, it will still look like everything was in vain. Yet we must disappoint Rumia. The reason the tree opened was because we had the golden cross in our pocket. With it, little Blondie is swiftly banished. Of course, this situation cannot be ultimately unwinnable. 3 curses down, 2 to go. If it wasn't obvious, Cross the Boundaries really wants Gensokyo to be a hostile or downright murderous place. Rumia is not going to be the last girl in Renko's way to qualify as a slasher villain. Since we have a way to defeat Sekibanki now, we are no longer forced to flee from her heads on sight. They're still aggressive though, and will kill Renko on, I believe, 3 collisions. While the ghastly heads move slowly, you should still try to pass them with some distance, and best from behind, as they will home in if you pass their cone of vision too closely. The many alcoves along the path help as well. There's 2 screens to live through in what I guess you could call a stealth section. The second area is more densely populated, but also much shorter. Looking back at it now, we were often overcautious against Sekibanki's gauntlet. Yet, when in doubt, you'd rather be patient than reckless. As gimmicky as Cross the Boundaries can sometimes be, few games have grasped me as much emotionally this year. It's certainly my pick for Touhou Fan Game of the Year 2025, which I know may be very questionable. There have been fan games of higher profiles this year, RPGs like the newest Fantasy Maiden Wars, or action games like Touhou Dystopian, yet I couldn't make any room for them so far. What I do know is that Cross the Boundaries came along as I was looking for exactly something like it, and that's worth a lot. We finally found our opponent Sekibanki, and as mythologically in line with Nukekubi, her body is actually woefully defenseless. She also stored an object at her cottage we can grab, the Wakasa stone, supposedly a bauble of useless superstition. We'll see about that. Be careful not to just take it and leave, as we must drench Sekibanki in dog blood to destroy her. Probably the most ruthless of these curse exorcisms, but it's what we have to do for the sake of Maribel. Hopefully, we can be more gentle to the final curse, Wakasaki Hime. Her design is my favorite in the whole game. It's wonderfully monstrous. I've clicked past her a little too fast, so pause now if you want to admire her. Simply trying to pelt her with a purging stone is not going to work. We're going to have to be stealthier and smarter. We were told the Ningyo doesn't eat fish, but perhaps she likes Mistia's snack. After all, lampreys are more like water worms than fish. Now that she is trusting us to bring her more food and has her guard down, we fling the Wakasa stone. Sadly, we weren't actually any kinder with Wakasagi Hime than we were with Sekibanki. The objective is complete, so we're transported rather abruptly out of Chapter 5 into a flashback. This is a good opportunity to wrap everything up. Beyond the mid-game, I wouldn't want to spoil too many of the more thrilling and chilling moments this story has to offer. With that, I'm Geshi86, this was Cross the Boundaries, a narratively ambitious title that came out of nowhere and very quickly grew really dear to me. Bis bald!